Um, 54. Oh, okay, so we're continuing on this week as the last week on this particular topic of the nature of the mind. So we've looked at that from a scientific perspective, we're looking at it from a Buddhist perspective, and there's also the correlation between one informing the other, particularly the Buddhist teachings informing the field of mind science. So here, continuing on from last time, getting to the nature of mind itself. The mind is distinct and non-physical. So this is a quote here. I'll read the quote. Though heavily contingent upon a physical base, including neural networks, brain cells, and sensory faculties, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, the mental realm enjoys a status separate from the material world. So this is from His Holiness the Dalai Lama's book, The Universe in a Single Atom, which maybe you might have encountered. So this came out in 2005, and it was a result of, first of all, in the 1970s, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama sought out Francisco Varela, who together established the Mind and Life Institute. So he was looking at scientific advice from Francisco Varela. So Francisco Varela, there's one of those books where there's conversations with the Dalai Lama and Francisco Varela from one of the Mind and Life conferences. But Varela, together with his mentor Umberto Maturana, so who I met when I was doing the Feldenkrais training in the 80s, and we would have these guest presenters. He happened to be in Australia, and had a guest presentation with him. And I was really together. They came up with this theory called autopoiesis, and so looking at that and cognition. So autopoiesis is sort of like the ability of a system to self-generate and maintain itself, like the cells in the body regenerate. So they're both interested from that biological sphere, but also we can look at that in terms of applying that to the investigation of consciousness. And Varela, in conversation with the Dalai Lama, talked about how meditative investigation was a powerful way to also influence scientific understanding. So, and then Maturana and Varela, the book that I really at the time I was introduced to, gravitated to, was called The Tree of Knowledge. And there's a few books called The Tree of Knowledge, but this one's about the biological roots of human understanding, and looking at the origins of humanness, not of humans, but our humanness, the quality of being human. So anyway, it's quite fascinating area of investigation. So then continuing on with the next slide, continuing on this quote from His Holiness, all phenomena possessed of these qualities count as mental. These features are difficult to conceptualize, but then we are dealing with phenomena that are subjective. So I know, sort of people like Alan Wallace, very much involved in the Mind and Life Institute as well, was very much concerned that we set up shall we say, experiments, scientific experiments to measure mind transformation via subjective experience, as he's always saying, because, you know, it's a subjective, everything mind-made, it's all subjective, it's our own, everything we experience in the world is a product of our mind. You know, as that quote from the Dhammapada, mind is the forerunner of all. So, so indeed, Alan Wallace did have this vision, and with, I can't remember the scientist guy, almost came to mind, maybe 15 years ago, they had the shamatha, what's known as the shamatha project, of people going into a 6 months meditation with qualitative and quantitative research done on that. I can remember before it actually started, like we were doing retreats with Alan Wallace, and he got us to keep a journal because he was trialing out the tools that we're going to be using. Yeah, so this was a study of the impact of shamatha on you know, to try and prove some of what the Buddha taught, basically. And so I can remember Alan talking about this one woman who started off, like you start off with very short sessions. So it was maybe about 17 sessions throughout the day, short sessions. I can turn my volume off, can't I? And then by the end, she was meditating 12 or so hours a day in one sitting because it felt so good. Right. So, you know, they talk about this physical, mental pliancy. Boy, I'm looking forward to the physical pliancy. But this quality of lightness and so forth. And the only reason that she broke then her meditation, because she had to go and do pipi eventually. Yeah, so there were people who achieved shamatha in that project. Of course, my dear friend who was, when we were doing the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training, it was 2012, and she said, and I happened to be in the control group. She wanted to be meditating for 6 months. Yeah, I was in the control group. We got to read magazines and drink coffee and just go about ordinary everyday business. She said, I was so annoyed. Well, yeah, contribution making to mind science, yeah, anyway. But you get it. If somebody who's like in the Dharma is like, great, I can be part of this experiment and do a retreat, fantastic. Yeah, didn't happen for her. Anyway, so, you know, many papers have come out of that study because, you know, as Alan used to say, we've got to go into the mind lab, the lab of the mind, and based on subjective experience, and then through that study, like, how do you have tools that can measure the benefits then? Of course, there was the guy we'll call a complete failure. Well, he actually achieved samatha in that project. And then as Alan recounted, he met him at a party subsequently, and this guy was off his face. And Alan was, you can imagine, so devastated. It's like, what happened? And he described that experience of attaining shamatha. He says, oh yeah, that was cool. But if you don't have the Dharma framework, if you don't have an ethical framework, if you don't value that, you know, people spend lifetimes, you know, to attain this, then it's not a guarantee, you know, as Geshe Tenzin Temple used to say, we've all been to the peak of samsara, we're almost out of there. We've all been there. So just like that guy, grasping, brought us back down. So here, so it's a subjective and internal rather than material objects that can be measured in spatio-temporal terms, okay, space-time. So we know that, and that's, you know, we've been talking about that over the past few weeks. Continuing on, next one. Perhaps it is because of these difficulties, the limits of language in dealing with the subjective, that many of the early Buddhist texts explain the nature of consciousness in terms of metaphors such as light or a flowing river. So I just want to read a bit from Geshe Rabten Rinpoche. So Geshe Rabten Rinpoche was a teacher of our teachers so Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche and others when they were in Buksa in India, the sort of refugee camp there. And Geshe Rabten was their teacher, main teacher. So in this book, there's a book on mind and mental factors, which by Geshe Rabten. I didn't check the title, the correct title, but I know it's on mind and mental factors. It might be called that. But here he talks about 6 similes of concentration of this mind. So we've got here light or flowing river. So he says the first one, so concentrating on the conventional nature of mind. The first one is reminiscent of the concentration of a small child when looking at a painting. When a very young child does this, they simply stare at the whole canvas, oblivious to all the small details. So like, for example, as Lama Tsongkhapa said, when in the volume 3 on special insight, which the first part's on karma abiding, looking at objects of meditation for cultivating karma abiding. And of course, the Buddha image is one of those. So you have the Buddha image, but you've got some general impression without all the details. And that becomes your object of meditation. So that's the analogy here. In the same way, we should simply observe the nature of the mind as a whole, the nature of the mind as a whole, without going into detail regarding some aspects as good and some aspects of bad. So as soon as, we sit in meditation and we want to be all nice and calm, and then thoughts come up and we try and push those ones away, or this is a nice feeling, we try and grab onto that. So he's saying, just stay in that general mode. Don't be grasping or clinging, grasping, pushing, trying to get to all that detail, let alone judging the states of mind. The reason for this is that if we do look at the detail, it results in distracting thoughts arising, so that then we get go down our whole discursive route of thought, which we're so very used to, as Lama Tsongkhapa said in 14th century Tibet. That meditating on the breath is the best for the discursive mind, the chatterbox mind, the endless blah, 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 blah. 14th century Tibet, right up there, the rooftop of the world, vast skies, very cool, very conducive to meditation. And what were people doing? Watching yaks. They looked after yaks. They took the yaks out into the mountains and watched the yaks. I don't know if you've observed yaks, but they don't do very much, they don't move very much, So if he's talking about discursive minds of those people who had, let us say, conducive circumstances for meditation, it's not, you had to be vigilant about the yaks were going to run away. Anyway, so that if that was the case in the 14th century, even more so in 21st century, isn't it? So we know the challenges then. Okay, so that's one analogy. The second method of observing the conventional nature of mind is likened to the calmness of the ocean. So here you have like Lama Yeshe's make your mind an ocean. You'd say, think big. So the sense of being in the middle of the ocean, it's incredibly vast. Imagine no land in sight, and just this is. And the other thing about an ocean is it's the water quality, its motility. That it's very fluid. But thinking, you know, you're in this vast stillness of the mind, cool, translucent, and so forth. So as Geshe Thubten says here, an ocean is not disturbed by the leaping of fish or by us throwing a stone into it. In the same way, the calmness of the mind should not be ruffled by coming into contact with slightly disturbing circumstances such as sounds or so forth, or by the arising of a wandering thought. So it's like when we start out, you know, we want to develop our mind in meditation. It's like the disturbing thoughts are at the center of the picture, but we want to get to a point where they're there at the periphery, but at the center of our attention is abiding in this vast stillness, like the calmness of the ocean, the vastness of the mind in its natural state, unobstructed, like that. If, for example, we are meditating and there's a knock on the door, our mind is immediately distracted. Depending on who you are, Leslie's going to be distracted because she's got to go out and see who it is. But the rest of us can just say, it's okay, Leslie will do that, so I don't have to be distracted by that. It's not that we don't hear the sound. We hear the sound, but it's a thing of not being distracted by it. You know, last time we were talking about like the simulated gunshot, you know, and maintaining meditative concentration, because you know you don't have to respond to that. You know in advance, you don't, even though you don't know when it's coming, you don't have to respond to that. It's there. There's lots of sounds in our environment when we're meditating. And actually, years ago, I was organizing this international event, and there was these Filipinos who came over. They lived in Manila, which is a very busy, loud city. And I took them up the Blue Mountains because I thought that'll be a nice experience, right? And they said, get us out of here. The silence is too loud. They couldn't bear the silence is too loud. That's what they said. Yeah. It was like not in their comfort zone. So it's good that we're not in complete silence when we're meditating, because we need to have a certain reference points around us that, you know, we haven't gone into some vacuum somewhere. Okay. Yeah, if we are distracted by the knock on the door, it's because our concentration is still very feeble. When we are more advanced, such disturbances will be unable to cause any agitation to our mind. As I said, we still hear that sound, that knock on the door, but it's like we hear the sounds, not because our ear consciousness goes outwards, which is what it does normally, you know, focuses outwards, but that it's a sound within the meditative space. So within the space of our body, within the space of our meditation, is a sound that arises. So it's a difference. Our energy is inwards, not focused outwards. Okay. A third method is likened to the sun shining in a cloudless sky. We know this. We know probably both these analogies. If there are no clouds in the sky, the sunlight is bright and clear. So it's getting to this nature of the mind being illuminating. Likewise, our mental concentration should always also be bright and clear, unclouded by dullness or obscurity. So here in these two analogies, we've got the two main obstacles in meditation: the distracted mind, distracted to external objects or to thoughts or so forth. And the other one, we sit down to meditate and then, oh, this feels good, you know, right. Or it just feels dull. We're looking at a Buddha image, but we can't see the light. We can see a sort of, we feel a heaviness or a dullness coming over us, right? And so again, we want to sort of be able to apply antidotes to these different things to either uplift the mind or bring the mind down. The fourth method refers to the way in which an eagle or vulture or another large bird soars through the sky. So that, vast wingspan. They don't flap their wings very often. It's just a sense of hovering and having this, well, bird's eye, as we say, perspective, so that you've got a vast view, but they just sort of make slight adjustments with their wings. They do not flap their wings very often. Rather, they flap 2 or 3 times, then glide for a great distance. I remember watching this program about the migration of birds, I think from South Australia, and they might have come somewhere else before South Australia, because it was, and then they come via Mandurah, the wetlands there, on their way to Europe. I didn't realise birds travel an enormous distance. So like that. So they're not like small birds, which must flap their wings continuously for a short flight. So here we're this image of just gliding through the sky, analogous to our mind. Similarly, when we concentrate on the clear and cognitive nature of the mind, we may experience periods when our mental energy becomes a little slack. When this happens, we flap our wings. Metaphorically. When this happens, we must meditate analytically for a little while to increase our mental energy. So to bring our mental energy back. So, for example, if I take as the object Shakyamuni Buddha, an image of Shakyamuni Buddha, and it says, once you have your image of Shakyamuni Buddha in front, you don't change it, you don't muck around with it. It's just like that's the Buddha image. And we focus our attention on that Buddha image. And then when the mind gets a bit slack, then we could analyze qualities of the Buddha, something in the context, or our own Buddha nature, that this is we can go into an analytical meditation, and then when we feel like, okay, now I've got my mind back on the object, and there's clarity, then we continue on with our placement meditation, our calm abiding meditation on the object. So we toggle back and forth. So when the mind is clearly focused on the object, again, we allow it to just concentrate. If our mental energy decreases, we should again meditate analytically and then smoothly concentrate, smoothly, without any ups and downs of the mind. Our mind should not be like the wings of an aeroplane which stay rigid, but should be like the wings of a large bird which flaps them a few times and then soars a great distance. Okay. And the fifth method of concentration, this analogy, again refers to a bird flying in the sky. When the bird flies, it does not leave any trace. Like, it's not like, those planes that do the sign writing or something. With a bird, there's no trace of the bird having been there in the sky. It passes over and leaves no trail. In the same way, when our concentration has become well developed, although occasional distractions may occur, this does not affect our concentration. The thought comes and goes, but the concentration remains steady. So this is when there might be the thoughts, but now they're at the periphery and our mind's just in the zone, as we like to say. The sixth method of concentration is similar to a cottonwood seed. There's some little like fluff ball, what are they? Or a piece of down. When we blow on them, they float gently through space because they are so light. So this is the analogy here. Similarly, when we meditate, we must also concentrate in such a way that our mind remains very light, not becoming heavy, not becoming tired, or not, I've got to concentrate, like concentrated orange juice. You know, it's not that, you know, just really spacious. And to end a meditation while we're still in that sense of spaciousness and lightness. And even if we're not, you know, say I've got a bit too, what's that, you know, what's focusing on the Buddha's eyes and lips and ears or whatever. But then at the end, if we release our mind into that sort of spaciousness, that lightness, then at least we end the meditation well, right? Any other analogies for the mind that you find helpful? I mean, there's 6 classic ones that he used, but yeah, the birds. Although I did, you know, when I was introduced to the hovering, mind you, I've probably got more interested in the bird. Probably a bit too interested in the bird. Yeah. Clear sky, yeah.
So you incorporate different analogies, like, you know,
yeah,
Lamy actually said the mind is like
an ocean, yeah.
So when you were
that's a sense of,
I thought, well, I need to really the ocean and the sky. So,
well, you can do both, or you can at one time use one and one time use another. Yeah, because we want that sense of vastness. I guess the sky has that element of, well, it has the clarity. It also has a sense of, you know, as analogous to space more than an ocean has. So, like, you know, it's, I mean, you can't sort of go, I'm touching the sky. You can touch the water. Like, you know, am I touching the sky? Well, I probably am touching the sky because it all comes down here. Like for Tibetans, when they visualize, because I guess from being on the rooftop of the world, the sky comes all around you, all the way. And it does, you know, it comes down to then whatever buildings or the ground or wherever. But usually I think, I don't know about anybody else, when I think of the sky, I always think up, which can be uplifting for the mind too. Yeah.
You realise the ocean, and all I can see is change.
Right.
The spiritual teacher, he said, when I look at the ocean, all I see is water. He, you know, that it was all one thing. And it's like, wow.
Well, as Venerable George Churanoff, when he was visiting, he was teaching here for a while, wasn't he? Might have been around that time because we had him as a guest teacher at Vajrayana Institute, and of course he did his meditation of, you know, visualizing, you know, the mind like an ocean, and then those, you know, when you drop the pebbles and so forth, the ripples come, and that's a sort of superficial distraction of the mind. So you bring your mind down further, and then there's the darting fish, and then you're distracted by the nice colours and everything else, or the big looming ones or whatever. So we're distracted to objects. And so it's like, just look at the water, just the water. Yeah.
The glass of plain water.
Oh, yes. The mud will settle, yeah.
And then what's left is a clear mind. And
yeah.
Again, because I can visualise that really clearly, that helps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true when it settles down. one of the women at Chenrezig, she used to do that one with kids, but she used sparkly glitter in the water. Make it more exciting for them. Snow dome. Yeah, that's right. Make your mind a snow dome. So what happened? Finished the story with Venerable George. So then we thought, okay, he wants us to focus on the water and not the fish. Took him to the aquarium. And we paid a lot of money to look at water and not fish. Everyone goes to the aquarium to look at fish, right? But do you know how hard it was? Because like there were these, you're looking into this water tank. And I thought, okay, don't look at the fish. But then it's like, there's caca in there. Oh, it might be fish food. Oh, you know, we want to make contact. And so it's really interesting. Yeah, label things and observe that.
That's not the gap or the discontinuity. Like we were wanting to see clear water, and anything that
is not
that,
oh, okay. Yeah, well, we do this sense of eliminate this and this and this and this. Yeah. Okay, so next one. So here we're continuing on with this quote from the Dalai Lama. And here it's bringing in, of course, the Buddhist philosophy of dependent arising, everything dependent on causes, conditions, dependent on its parts. And of course, the most subtle level of dependency, merely labeled by mind. But we're here focusing on the causes and conditions, right? Looking at that first level. Buddhism proposes two principal categories of cause. There are the substantial cause and the contributory or complementary cause. So the example of a clay pot. The substantial cause refers to the stuff, the clay. It has to be clay, not something else, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't be a clay pot, Mr. Potter. That turns into a particular effect, namely the clay that becomes the pot. So that you can say is the substantial cause, is the clay itself, correct?
And the water.
Well, we haven't got to the water yet.
Oh.
We've just got to clay. Right. Substantive cause. And then, by contrast, all the other factors that contribute to bringing about the pot, the skill of the potter himself or herself, themselves, the kiln that fired the clay and the water, and what else? There are other things. These are not comprehensive. Glazes, etc. So they're complementary in that. Well, the glaze doesn't make it turn into a pot, does it? No, glaze comes later. But these include the water in here, obviously, that make it possible for the clay to turn into a pot. Yeah, and then other conditions such as moisture in the air, I don't know.
Well, without the glaze, you'd have a leaking pot.
Okay, well then you need the glaze. Otherwise, it's a non-functioning. Yeah, it would be a non-functioning pot. It would look like a pot, but not be a pot. Well, not function as a pot. So, and it's interesting because, you know, when we apply this in the 12 links, where the link of volition, the second link of volition of karmic formation, that it's exactly this process analogous that we're all engaging in and creating all these karmic imprints in our mind, various shapes and sizes of pots that then turn into our throwing karma. So then the Dalai Lama brings to mind the teachings of Dharmakirti. So we referred before, Dharmakirti was a 6th century, 7th century, one of the great Nalanda masters, the 17 pandits, as we call them, of Nalanda. And when you, like this, the statue in the Nalanda master's garden has him in debate mode, because he was very much known for his debate. So he wrote the most known Pramanavartika, his text on commentary on valid cognition, which very much influenced the philosophical view of Lama Tsongkhapa and so forth. So it sort of covers logic, philosophy, philosophy of language, and epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge itself, the validity, the scope, and distinguishing between faith of conviction and or reasoning and opinion. Because, you know, often someone expresses an opinion, we immediately take it as fact. Or if not, we hear it from 3 different sources, or we hear it 3 times. Now it's become fact. Yes? True? Or our own opinion, we regard as fact. So here is like, well, let's distinguish these different states of mind. And Dharmakirti also, you know, sort of provided the tools of debate, the sort of arguments and consequences, like using syllogisms and so forth, such as, well, if mind is brain, does the mind stop at death time? So then, if that is true, what about karma? How does that, you know, so you look at holes in arguments to be able to, you know, to be able to rationalize. So, so Dharmakirti argued for the tenability of the theory of rebirth on the basis of consciousness. The consciousness of a newborn infant comes about from what? Our preceding instant of consciousness, an instance of consciousness, just like the present moment, but it was the preceding moment that led to the present moment, which is by now the future moment of consciousness. This idea of continuity of consciousness, which we can't perceive. So we, like last week, we talked about inference and, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. So we have to infer and rely on scriptural texts, such as that of Dharmakirti, giving a valid explanation that if we apply the rules of reasoning to that, can we refute that? Well, no, can't understand it, but can't refute it. Just the Buddha said, check it up, test it. If you can refute it, chuck it out, no problem. Right. Reams have been written on the analysis of this form of Buddhist reasoning, the technical aspects of, so the point I wish to make, His Holiness, that Dharmakirti clearly did not think that the theory of rebirth was purely a matter of faith. He felt that it falls within the purview of what he characterized as slightly hidden phenomena, which can be verified by means of inference. So at the end of last time, we're looking at the manifest phenomena, which is obvious, you know, to our eyes, to our ears, to things that we get. And then the slightly hidden, and such as where there's smoke, there's fire, or, as he posits, due to the continuity of, you know, reasoning of the continuity of consciousness, one can posit past and future lives. And then the extremely hidden, as the Buddha said, only a Buddha knows karma, that we can know it at some levels, but we can't know its intricacies in the way that a Buddha mind knows. So that's extremely hidden. So these 3 levels of consciousness or of knowledge. Okay, next one. The issue revolves around the argument that the various instances of consciousness we experience come into being because of the presence of the preceding instance of consciousness. So we've discussed that. And since matter and consciousness have totally different natures, for one's physical and one's not non-physical, the first moment of consciousness of the new being must be preceded by its substantial cause, which is a moment of consciousness. So here it comes back to what Maturana and Venerable were also looking at from a scientific point of view, of that self-generating system, self-reproducing system. If we apply that to cognition, they applied to the cells and they went on and looked at cognition. So it's quite exciting that there was a scientific language for it. In this way, the existence of a previous life is affirmed, even though, so using logic, reasoning, not because we remember a moment of our previous life, let alone most of the moments of this life, is it? But there are, yeah, by using reasoning, purely based on the continuity of consciousness. Because if we use what would be an invalid reason? Oh, well, I went and had my tarot or whatever it is, and they said I was an Egyptian princess, or, you know, so therefore it's true, or, you know, whatever. I did one of those rebirthing. Was it rebirthing?
Yeah, that was the thing.
That was a thing, right? Well, it doesn't prove anything, I don't think. It doesn't prove a thing. And yet people had profound experiences there, but there's no validation of that. And it's fine as an experience. I'm not saying invalidating their experience, but it doesn't, it's not, it wasn't, it was a simulation rather than an actual reality. I'm not quite sure why people wanted to visualize themselves squeezing down a birth canal, but, you know.
I've actually done it.
You've done it, and to what benefit?
Oh, to what? Well, it was getting in touch with some damage that had occurred that I was carrying with me.
Yeah.
It was a great way of going back to that period of time and assessing the situation to realise what you had control and you didn't have control of.
Also gave you a different perspective.
Different perspective to it.
Yeah, okay.
Also gave forgiveness to yourself and forgiveness.
Yeah,
to
so
others.
its function, so there was a function.
Yeah, there was a function.
Yeah.
Within of this life.
Yes, and it was beneficial. Good. Okay. We'd call it, because it was part of the whole reframing our experiences, yeah. Which is all what the Buddha taught. Reframe everything. Moment by moment. So the next one, you there. The Buddha explained the continuity of life and rebirth principally on the basis of the continuity of mind across lifetimes, not the gross level of mind that's dependent on the physical body. So this quote is from the Approaching the Buddhist Path. So this is with the volumes that I think you've been reading. It's the first of 10 volumes from this library, this series, Library of Wisdom and Compassion by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Venerable Thubten Chodron. And so it basically is covering in those 10 volumes the whole of the Lam Rim. The 10th one is on Vajrayana and culmination of the path. That's what it's called, that particular one.
I was also about the consequences of continuity of mind, that you might be going to cover that.
What were you thinking about?
Well, I was thinking, especially so His Holiness there is sort of saying on the basis of a material or non-material.
Yeah.
So that idea that consciousness comes in when the egg and sperm meet. So that's why, we don't believe in abortion. And I've also been reading recently, and it said they've been able to prove that learning starts before you're born, which makes sense because you've got a consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
It is interesting. A friend of mine, we're colleagues working in this national arts body, and her area was music. And so she had compiled some music, I think it was mainly Mozart, but she figured this is the optimum music to play to the baby in utero. She gave it to everyone who got pregnant. But you can. I mean, you've got to have, if it's from the moment of conception, that the consciousness is there, it's part of that, then there's consciousness there the whole time, right?
And of course, then through the death process as well. And then
Yes.
afterwards, and
Yes.
then around we go again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So there's, yeah. So then you've got to think there's all those moments of consciousness. I don't think it's, was it Forrest Gump? Was that? No. What was the film where it's like starts off with a baby in utero? Is that Forrest Gump?
The world according to God.
The World According to God.
God.
Yeah, that one.
I read
Yeah. It was sort of like, I mean, it's good to think about the experience in utero. And I guess people who work in that field are very much more knowledgeable about that than someone like me.
There's been a new breakthrough in science when they're looking at the conception of the egg and the sperm. They thought that the sperm actually had as they said, got a small tail like a tadpole.
Yeah.
It actually flickers, but it doesn't actually flicker. It actually travels in one direction.
One direction, which is round and round.
Yeah.
Mm.
So its tail turns around like a corkscrew.
Oh, there you go.
That's how it propels itself.
Ah, okay. Rather than this squiggly thing going up. Oh gosh, I have to.
like they measure the motility.
Yeah. Fascinating, isn't it?
But
Please.
yeah, I mean,
You'd feel very cold.
it's like thinking about where the consciousness. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That consciousness comes in at that time. But
well, it's there, but it's frozen. So it's having a very cold hell's experience, I would imagine. It's not like the consciousness, well, the consciousness has to be there because otherwise when they unfroze it or whatever, then it wouldn't function as an embryo.
because thinking about IVF, I mean, even though that doesn't, the conception doesn't happen in the human body, it still happens.
Yeah.
And so then the consciousness has to undergo like being implanted.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
going like you say, a cold hell's experience.
well, it'll be cold.
Yeah.
The consciousness is there. It's like snap frozen.
Eating an ice cream.
The embryo is eating an ice cream.
No. When you're eating an ice cream and you bite
Yeah.
much of it, you get,
Oh, you get that cold headache. Yeah.
That's magic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it has to be there. It's like, people do that. Is it cryogenics?
Yeah.
People go off and
They're waiting for a cure to come along.
so there's the one at the end of life, a cure for death, as if you're going to wake up, youthful again and keep going, or whatever. No, but there's a therapy that people do that is like that. Like one of our students at Vajrayana she used to take herself off for this cryo something therapy, where you go in, you don't get frozen for some future life, but you, for a period of time, you do this frozen thing in the hope of maintaining a youthful appearance.
Oh, it was a beauty therapy.
A beauty therapy.
I was thinking it was a health therapy.
No, it's a beauty thing. Maybe for health there's a validity, but yeah. All sorts of things. We've got very creative minds.
Oh, if I may add?
Yes, please.
Yes. So going into that cold temperature, that cold exposure, there is good science to show that it is good for health, for body's recovery. It's the same kind of benefits, very similar to sauna. So heat, very similar to fasting. It activates a genetic mechanism that gets the body to repair genetic information, repair damages cells. So it is like scientifically supported co-exposure. Yeah.
Thank you. There you go. Cold exposure is good. I hope it works for the frozen embryo and it stays nice and healthy. Okay, then yes, we're on the right slide. As the primary feature of light is to illuminate. So consciousness is said to illuminate its object. We use this sense of light, like you mentioned about the sky and clarity and light. Just as in light, there's no categorical distinction between the illumination and that which illuminates. It's not like, you know, there's a lamp thinking it's going to illuminate something out there. The light itself, is light. Its nature is light, and it illuminates. So the idea that, you know, the light lights up the room. So there's like not that distinction. They're both called light. So in consciousness, there's no real difference between the process of knowing or cognition and that which knows or cognizes. In other words, the mind, consciousness, awareness, and knowing or cognition, the function of the mind. So there's this quality of illumination in the sense that that is its nature, is to illuminate. And we use those terms when we're talking about the mind. Okay, next one. Continuity of consciousness is what we've been talking about. The fundamental innate mind of clear light, that is the final basis of designation of a person. Final basis of designation means when you're gone through all those dissolutions of the death process that connects one life with the next. So here we, you know, when we go through the dissolutions, earth, water, fire, air, the 80 conceptual minds, and then we have the mind of white, red, and black appearance, black near attainment, and then the clear light of death, which is non-conceptual. So we arrive at this non-conceptual mind, and the mind abides there until, so it's very subtle level of mind, and then the sort of subtle wind energy stirs, and that initiates that reverse process. So the reverse process in the bardo, where you go from the clear light to the black near attainment, red increase, white appearance, 80 conceptual minds, and then the air, fire, water, earth. Ta-da, in your body. So this is really talked about in great detail in the highest yoga tantra class, you know, in the Buddha, highest yoga tantra, in these tantras. And it's a process that goes on naturally, like when we go to sleep, at the time of death, and also in tantric practice, you're going through this process again and again of being in the dissolutions and then in the reverse order and going backwards and forwards and so forth, getting to more and more subtle levels of consciousness. So that's something that is, you know, quite elaborated in the tantric texts. Just when you think, oh, I must be there yet. I must be there. And it's just like, oh, no, but then you have to do this and you have to do that. And there's like 5 stages of this and so many stages of that. Yeah, but it's all based on those dissolutions. as we've talked previously, that what we want to be able to taste that nature of the clear light mind, or the most subtle mind. Okay, next one. As the primary feature. Oh, we did that one, I think. No.
Sorry.
Number 63, I'm at number 63. How we know it, yeah. Oh, that's the one we just talked about, isn't it? 64. It is the subtlest mind, the fundamental innate mind of clear light that's the final basis. Oh no, we did that one, I'm sorry. I must have gone backwards rather than forwards. Okay, next one.
65.
Yes. In particular, the texts of highest yoga tantra present the essential nature of the inner wind and of the mind. So this subtle wind and mind as being one of indivisibility. There's inseparable. Even in the case of a subtle mental consciousness, it's understood to be inseparable from its medium, which is the wind. This I might sound very theoretical at this time. And so this second, this is this is another series of books of the Dalai Lama, very much looking at philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. So this one is on the mind. The first one is on the physical world, the mind, and then the philosophical schools and philosophical topics. So there's 4 volumes of quite advanced, just saying. Okay. This innate mind is characterized as energy wind from the point of view of its movement towards the object. So it's like when the eye perceives something, it's not just the eye consciousness, there's this movement, this subtle movement towards the object. Right? And same with sound, there's the ear consciousness and the movement towards the object. And next one, as the primary feature of light is to illuminate, so consciousness is said to illuminate its object, just as we said. Just as in light, there is no categorical. Oh, we've done that one. Am I still going backwards? Yes, I'm going backwards. Try to do the right thing.
What are those words?
The mind is not something physical. It does not have mass, shape, colour, and so forth, right? Yet states of mind are closely correlated with brain activity. States of mind. So here, when the next section on this, on the topic of the mind is on mind and mental factors, looking at particularly at constructive emotions and destructive emotions. That's what we'll be doing after Easter. But here it's saying it's still, there is a correlation between, it's not like they're totally independent. This is why scientists can posit, and those that posit it starts with the brain, because there are measurable, mental activity produces measurable activities in the physical brain as evidenced in neuroplasticity research. So for example, meditating on compassion, when they studied the meditation on compassion, and that meditating on compassion for 10 minutes a day for 2 weeks, as little as 2 weeks, has profound transformative effect in the brain, in neural pathways, more so than meditating on the breath, for example, which is very, very beneficial. It's not saying it's not beneficial, but that power of imbuing the mind with something like compassion or loving kindness or joy, or those positive states of mind, makes it much more powerful, and does in fact, like we had the mind that changes the brain, that establishes neural pathways. Okay. As a I keep going backwards. Okay. The mind of a human at the time of conception is the continuation. So the continuity of consciousness is a continuation of the mind at the time of conception, is a continuation of a stream of awareness that existed before the sperm and ovum came together. Did that whirligig thing, before that whirligig thing happened. And at death, the subtle mind carries on while the coarser mind ceases to exist, similar to falling asleep and dying, as we, look at in looking at, the dissolutions of the death process. So you can see how key that meditation becomes. Even if we haven't taken tantric empowerment, we can still do that meditation and familiarize there. So we've been talking a lot about the continuity of consciousness. So I thought no time like the present to do a short meditation on this, on the continuity of consciousness, trying to get a sense of that continuity from our own experience, which we can only do through meditation. So sitting comfortably, well supported by the ground below. This one will be a brief one. Feel that support coming up through the earth so that your body can settle in, settle down, and not have to feel like it's holding itself up. Bringing, relinquishing the weight of the pelvis to gravity. So you can feel that firm sitting on the seat, providing a stable, firm, reliable foundation for your meditation. Then withdrawing your awareness into the space of the body. So even though there's sounds around, that experiencing those from within the space of your body, within the space of your mind. And just take a few moments to bring your awareness to your breath, wherever you experience that in the body, to gather your energies inwards, allowing the mind to settle. And we want to settle it into that quality of quiet, of stillness and clarity, this luminosity of the mind. Just check up that you're not tensing, tightening anything to focus and concentrate. With the breath out, release any tension, tightness, wherever you experience that. And breath in, bring a sense of spaciousness around the muscles, around the face, around neck, the shoulders, all the way down to the tips of the toes, the extremities of the fingers. Settling your body in a state of comfort and ease. First, turning your awareness, this illumination factor, clarity, to your present state of mind, maybe thoughts or sensations, whatever mental activity, just observing, to notice you're not trying to change anything there, just to be aware, to illuminate the mind, illuminating the mind. So start seeing if you can trace back this present moment of consciousness to the previous moment, experiences that you've had in the previous moment of obviously being here and listening and thinking and so forth. And then what you did before that in terms of maybe getting here or being here and setting things up. So tracking back to through your experiences since you woke up this morning, as much as you can, recall. This is not to relive, it's simply to recognize there is this continuity. And think if these moments are the same stream of consciousness as your present experience. Maybe before you woke up, you were dreaming. You're definitely asleep. See what you can recall from any dreams you had or anything happened in that sleep state. Do they belong to the same mind stream? And then reflecting back further yesterday, the day before, and so forth. We don't need to sort of cognize every single moment. We probably can't. But just getting a sense of continuity of experience of the same stream of consciousness back, last week, last month, so forth, last year. Simply to bring out to our awareness this experience of continuity of our mind. Through the function of memory. So going back as far as you can, maybe jumping to experiences from when you were younger, your adolescence, your childhood. And just open your mind to allow such memories to arise. Again, not to relive things or to go through it all again, of course. And we won't remember everything, but thinking that our present mind stream is a continuation of previous experiences, ones that we can remember, of course. And then if we can go back even further, maybe we can't, maybe, however far we have a sense of awareness, maybe, I don't know, if you remember any in utero experiences or even further back. And then bring your mind back to the present moment. And see that we could also think ahead what we're going to be doing, as we end this session today, our proceptive awareness. We make plans, sort of like hasn't happened yet, but we have this sense of a future continuity, moment by moment of consciousness. And along with that, we set aspirations, we set goals, we set plans which may or may not manifest. But these are all established then also on moments of consciousness. And again, bringing yourself back to the present moment, just as it is, dwelling in the momentary awareness, which is moment by moment, you know, this moment, continuation of the previous moment, and so forth, and preceding the next moment. Feeling that sense of a flow of consciousness, a stream of consciousness. And then think whatever's been beneficial from this brief taste of exploring the continuity of consciousness, holding the benefits of that, any positive energy that's resulted or awareness that you're able to carry on throughout the day and days ahead, long after this meditation's over, which is around about now. Oh, there's a dinger. There's a dinger. Okay, and you can relax. Such a reflection can also be something that we could also contemplate in relation to karma and how karmic imprints get laid on these moments of consciousness. Doesn't, you know, again, we don't remember everything, but to recognize, oh yeah, this is how this happens, you know, moment by moment by moment. So anything from that experience, very brief? Anyone wants anything you observed or? Okay. Well, the one thing about, you know, when we develop shamatha, the different stages of samatha, that the mind becomes calmer and calmer and calmer. And then, as the Buddha said, how far back can you cognize? That we get more clarity coming in, or we might say more memories coming in. But of course, we have to check the validity of those whether this actually happened or not, or whether I've just created another story in my head. So we're really wanting to, you know, again, not be able to remember everything, but get a feeling for this momentary nature of mind. Even the momentary nature of mind is why we can transform the mind. It's why we can work with our mind and transform the mind. Last one. Oh, there's another one after, but we only need this one. We're not finished. Number 69. Which is transform your mind. So it comes back to William James. We do have free will in being able to willfully transform our patterns of thought and attention. I mean, the whole of developing shamatha is developing our attention, you know, attentional balance. We can develop our cognitive balance, our emotional balance. We can develop our, and probably have in this life even, changed our fundamental, maybe some values have stayed the same, some things we really hold dear, but other things it's just like, oh, actually, now I'm more interested in preparing for the next life because I never knew about that before, that I could. And now I'm more, that's become a priority, for example. So these are things that, you know, along with everything that we've learned in this life, that we have transformed the mind with. Due to the fundamental clarity of the mind and its continuity over many lives, there is thus the possibility of a complete transformation of the mind through completely removing all negative or destructive tendencies and fully developing all positive or constructive qualities. So that'll be the next module of this module that we'll be looking at. Will be precisely that. Okay, so I'll leave it there for today. We can dedicate page 8, dedications. Gewadi no dodang Namaha Sangye Nrunyone Trowa Chikyang Malukan De Sala Ngopa Shojan Chub Sen Chog Rimbo Shema Kepa Nam Ge Guchi Ye Panyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Lu Pewa Shu. Page 9. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. I pray for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher, an assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravakas and practical Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands. Please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings who suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay, thank you very much. And just a couple of announcements. So tomorrow we have our Harmony Day. Actually, today is the official Harmony Day, but it's Harmony Week up until Sunday. And so we have our Harmony Day celebration here, our second annual one. And we've got the mayor and the deputy mayor coming, Auntie Nan. We've got Vietnamese song and dance, hopefully Tibetan dance again. Genma's coming, many people from many faiths are coming, and Sunny, our dear friend, is going to be cooking up yet another Vietnamese feast of snacks, he calls it. But his snacks always seem to be meals. So it'll be a fun celebratory time for all. So please come along. And if you're able to come earlier and help, I know you guys have mentioned coming earlier, but yes, got a few decorations in the harmony theme to put up, and a bit of cleaning out the back and so forth. Okay, so that would be good. And then just to mention, there's three of, Discovering Buddhism, this round of Discovering Buddhism, we come to an end on Sunday. So again, bring snackies. So thank you for putting out the email. Anybody who's ever, even for one day, whatever, participated in Discovering Buddhism can come along and celebrate together. Yeah. It's quite an achievement. Yeah, it's wonderful. Dedication, wonderful dedication, really is. Okay.